Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming this afternoon. As you just heard, I am Harry Davies, this is my father, and I'm here to share with you my story and experience of living with a brain injury. I'm going to put a disclaimer out right now because this is my first time speaking to a large group and it's nerve-wracking, but anyway. My story started on the 3rd of June 2013 on a Monday. Me and my very good friend Douglas Simpson, who I'm very thankful is here today, were on our way to his house in the countryside of our little village. Now we were on a corner road, and as we came around this corner, we travelled up, and we were surrounded by kind of a forest area, so the roads aren't very clear from each side. Now at this point, a very large delivery van came around this corner, and obviously travelling up the road, you can probably put the pieces together. He did hit me whilst I was on the bike. Thank you, Douglas, for bringing your helmet to school that day, or else I would not be here right now. I think it was about 35 miles per hour I was hit at, and I flew over the handlebars and a straight impact onto the road, onto my head, and that was me more or less unconscious instantly. Now that is a bit of a bonus because I'm only telling you stuff that I've been told at this point, because I do not remember a thing. I just know it was a Monday and where I was. Now, as you can imagine, the driver and Douglas were both in incredible shock, so it was a big panic for them, and that was kind of hard to place a 999 call, but with a stroke of luck, an off-duty fireman came around the corner at this point. I have met him a couple of times actually. He's a really nice guy. He'd seen similar situations as the one that I was in. He got me in an appropriate position because, I was losing a lot of blood quickly from my head. He sorted out the 999 call. By the time the police had come, my parents had been informed, and I, to this day, still can't imagine the horror it must have felt for them when they heard the news. Although it wasn't my fault, I am sorry to them to this day, but here we are. They closed the road off, my parents arrived, and then it was a case of getting me to hospital as quickly but as safely as possible. And I believe it must have been, we had a police bike in front, a police car in front of me getting people out of the way, me in an ambulance, my father behind a police car, and so on and so forth. But it was straight into surgery for me. The surgery was performed by Dr. Kandasamy, who I have thanked many times, of course, as you can imagine. And then I believe A&E lasted 2 weeks and 3 days or so. I was hooked up to God knows how many machines and support systems, but either way they kept me alive. And then hospital life came with quite a few delights and surprises as well, actually. I was on copious amount of morphine, which were keeping my pain and head at bay. Hallucinations were a big part of my hospital life, which is both hilarious and horrifying at the exact same time. I was looked after a lot. I had visitors every day. And then it was a case of getting me up to kind of back on, literally on my feet. We had physio, I had teachers and students come in to kind of keep me company. But it didn't take too long for things to wear off because it was now time to go home and enjoy summer holidays, which was great. It was great to be back with my family and friends in the sunshine in the countryside where we lived. Having said that, there were a few obstacles. I had a headache quite literally the entire summer holidays, and I got very tired, fatigued, exhausted very quickly, and that was a big challenge because I was a very active person. This was also the same year I started high school, which was difficult because I didn't really know what to expect. I was offered loads and loads of support. I believe when I first started, I was offered half days only, no school Friday. I'd have early lunches, support in every classroom, and then exams came time to those. It was I had my own room, computer, support, extra time, everything. On my first day of high school, me and Douglas actually got filmed walking through the corridors for an STV program, 999 Close Calls, which was very exciting to be on. and reenact the whole thing. But high school taught me a lot about self-independence and confidence as well. Because one thing I didn't want was for my injury and suffering and pain to affect what kind of person I was going to be. I refused anything I was offered help-wise with school, with exam work, whatever. I just wanted to be as a person. Although I have a traumatic event, it's just a story I like to tell now. I will tell it for the rest of my life, no doubt. And throughout high school, I would be in and out of hospital and doctors' meetings and tests and physio and what have you. But I did manage to do all my exams, and they didn't go very well, but I still sat them all. And now, after high school, I believe it was, I went straight into full-time work, which was a challenge and quite scary. I've worked at Starbucks for nearly 5 years now, and at the George Street store for just over a year. I do have the odd headache when it's busy, but you learn how to ignore it and things like that. And with kind of obstacles with headaches, especially during high school and work, it was hard. I was treated differently by my friends and by people in my year, but it was something that I was up for the challenge. I did actually miss hospital quite a lot. As you can see on the screen here, I was hooked up to so many things, and it was stressful for my parents, especially. And obviously, as I said, it being unconscious, as I don't remember it, that was kind of a benefit for me. I always said that my parents had it worse. But we're here now. I love my job. I live in Edinburgh with my amazing girlfriend, and I work with some of the best people I've ever met in my life. And I don't let my head injury get the better of me. Before I hand you over to my father, I just want to say thank you very much for listening. And make sure just stay to yourself and don't let any traumas or injuries or obstacles in your life decide who you are, because it's always your decision. Thank you very much, everyone.
I didn't know he was going to be that good. Oh my word. We called this I Love You, this little talk, because that's a book from when he was a little boy, and I read it to him every day. It's actually quite difficult to talk about this without crying, as you might imagine. But what I wanted to, I'm going to take it highbrow now and put this on here. This is a quote by one of the famous Stoic thinkers called Epictetus, or Epictetus if you want to call him by another name or another pronunciation. And I was thinking about what I was going to say to you, and what I decided I'd talk about was really that you have a choice, because events happen in life and horrible things happen in life. This is particularly horrible. You wouldn't wish this on anybody. As you might imagine, this is a parent's worst nightmare, when you get a phone call to say you need to come quickly because there's been an accident. And when we turned up, Lisa and I, at the accident, it was about, 15 minutes after it happened. There was an ambulance there were doctors and things like that, paramedics. And I got there just as Harry fell unconscious, literally his eyes shut, as I got right up close to him and said that I was here. And then I saw the man who knocked him off his bike. And I'll be honest with you, I wanted to kick the crap out of him. Not unreasonably, I feel. Right? Look what you've just done to my son. Fortunately for me, there was a very large policeman standing in the way, so I wasn't able to get access to him. Right? And then, of course, events take over, and you are standing at the back of this ambulance and thinking, gosh, I'm going to be one of those parents who has a child die. And what's more, I'm witnessing it. And then you get to sick kids, and I was angry, very angry in sick kids. I remember they were dealing with Harry in A&E, and I was in a separate room with Lisa, and I kicked a chair. I was furious. Why should this happen to such an innocent little boy who was just on his way home. But then we got into everyday life at hospital because we lived at Sick Kids. We stayed there every night, and every morning we had the nightmare of going down to see Harry in his bed and ask the fantastic nursing staff, has he had a good night, has he had a bad night? And very quickly you realise you've got a choice, because I was full of rage and anger towards this man and vengeance. But if you hold on to that, the only person that affects is you. It doesn't affect him. He's got his own issues to deal with. So we chose, Lisa and I, and we talked about this, we chose not to have any ill feeling towards him. We could have done, but we chose not to. We chose to say it was an accident. It wasn't done deliberately, it was an accident, and accidents happen. And the next choice we had to make is, where it happened on the country lane is a country lane out in East Lothian near Haddington and Caitland called Boggs Holdings. Some of you may have heard of that, I don't know. But the temptation is, I can't ever drive down that lane again, because you can imagine it's such imprinted on your brain of what you've witnessed here, such an awful, awful event. But then you've got a choice there. Are you really then going to carry on your life but always avoid that piece of road? Because if you do, it'll just become a bigger and bigger thing. So very quickly went, no, I've got to drive down that road again. I can't let this thing become a thing. And in fact, I drove down it today as well. And I've driven it down it 100 times. And yes, it's still the memory, and I can still go past exactly the same spot where Harry lay on the floor, but it doesn't bother me so much. It's not a huge thing, so there was a choice there. And the other choice that we had was what narrative we were going to tell Harry. Because it would have been really easy with Harry just to say, as he grew up and he got into teenage years, well, you can't do that because you've had a severe brain injury. And, well, don't worry that you can't do that because, well, that's not surprising because you've had a really bad brain injury. And use that with third parties. Go, well, you need to be really easy on Harry because he had a severe brain injury. You can choose to adopt that attitude, but Lisa and I chose not to. And we chose to just tell him, yeah, you've had an accident. Yeah, it was a brain injury, but that doesn't stop you doing anything that you want to achieve. You can do anything that you want, but I've had a brain injury. Yeah, but it's just an accident. You get over it. You'll be fine. You can do anything you want, because you don't want to label him with that. And actually, as I sit here just now and I see him talking, I'm thinking, do you know that choice? I think that paid off, because as you can see, he's just cracked on and he just gets on. And I realise there is different scale of brain injuries. And I don't believe in miracles, but if I did believe in miracles, you've got to see him compared to what he might well have been like. And that's all I wanted to pass on to you, is that you have a choice. And there are plenty of people out there. I'm reminded of a woman called Amy Cuddy. Amy Cuddy, you should see her TED talk actually. She spoke in Edinburgh in September 2012. And she suffered a severe brain injury when she was a teenager. And she'd almost been a child prodigy. She'd been a genius at school. And her parents and her were told, this has been a severe brain injury. She was in a road traffic accident. You've really got to manage her expectations. She's going to do nothing more than probably just stack shelves in a Walmart, stack shelves in a 7-Eleven. She's not going to be that massively academic achieving woman that she would have been because of a brain injury. Well, she's now a professor of social psychology at Harvard, because she just refused and go, okay, it's going to be harder for me, but I've still got the capacity and I'm going to study and work and work and work, and now she's a professor. So we have choices. Thank you for inviting us along this afternoon, and now go and get yourself a shortbread and a cup of coffee. Thank you.